And welcome to the Barry Foster Show on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, you can put them in the comments below or drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. And we'll try to have a program for you each and every weekday morning here on our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. We're trying to get to the next level, so if you we're about halfway there now, so if you can help us with subscribing to our YouTube page and joining our page at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram, that would be very helpful. In the studios, John Larsen. John, good to have you with us, my friend.
Good morning.
And, one thing that's coming up this week, not only in Highlands County, but counties across the Sunshine State, is they are planning their new budgets for the upcoming fiscal year. And it's something that we need to be aware of and involved with. And if you want to make any changes, now is the time to make them. When you get to their budget hearings in July and August and September, all these decisions already have been made. And we've seen citizen journalists now going in and looking at waste, fraud, and abuse on the state level. And you can get your local information mostly by asking it. If you can't get it with a formal information request, you can get a Freedom of Information Act request, and pick a department you like. Here in Highlands County, I think one place to look really hard is maybe the landfill. That's a good place to look.
Yeah, it's Doge is a hot topic, and with all the corruption that's being unearthed in this country today, all over. It's not just isolated to one. It's everywhere, and it's at all facets of government. Mm-hmm. And so finding ways to eliminate waste, and we talked about this before, but there are now a lot of citizen journalists, if you will, or just whoever that are out there saying, "I want to be the next Nick Shirley.
Yes,
I want to be the next one." Okay, because that kid he has gone from nothing to up here. He's on major shows now talking about it. So I think, eliminating waste, you're not going to become the most popular guy in town if you start reporting on the local issues that financially are hurting the taxpayers. But, if nobody wants to talk about it, then it'll never come to light, and it'll just continue even at a faster pace.
Well, see, and Nicholas Shirley is nowhere without Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Dave is, and he is the unsung hero of this, because if you go back and look at the early episodes, he has been doing this research for years.
Yep.
He has been hollering about this for years. Yep. to deaf ears. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, and his administration has no interest in hearing anything about any of this kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, he gets hooked up with a kid who's got somewhat of a following, and they start going and doing some on-site research. And he's got the addresses, and he says, "Okay, Nicholas Shirley, let's go." And Nick's got a cameraman. He's got an audio guy. And so they start going out and looking around, and they start showing up, and he starts doing these podcasts, and it just goes through the roof. And now, following him, we are seeing some other people doing the same thing in New York, doing the same thing in Maine, doing the same thing in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And you could do the same thing here in Florida if you want to find a place where, you're very unhappy about the way things are going. You can do that kind of research and get it on the internet for other people to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, because for so long, the politicians, the mucky mucks, if you will, that are involved in this kind of thing, of course, have hidden it, squirreled it away, did whatever they could do to make sure that they were filling their pockets, but nobody would find out. Mm-hmm. And they were able to get away with it. And it's still going on today. It hasn't stopped. It's just now that more of it's coming to light all across the country.
Or filling the pockets of their family and friends.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something coming up today in Highlands County. They're having a Thursday meeting because of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And when there's a holiday on Monday, and we can go back into celebrating things on their actual day, but the government went and started making all the holidays on Monday so they could have a 3-day weekend. Okay.
Yep.
And we would be paying for a 3-day vacation weekend for government employees. And so the Martin Luther King holiday falls on a Monday. I think it's the third Monday in January. And when it does, the government employees are not working. And gosh, it's just too much work for them to have that day off and have all the stuff ready for a Tuesday meeting. So they push the meetings back to Thursday because they just don't have enough time, John.
Yeah.
So, but there's a thing that's going to be coming up for discussion, which is the county voted to make a $100,000 donation to the new baseball museum over here, just not only a few hundred yards from where we're sitting in Avon Park. Avon Park has a rich history in baseball. It was the training grounds for the St. Louis Cardinals for several years. Many of the baseball greats, Babe Ruth and some of them, played here. And Avon Park also has a rich history in high school sports, going on to be state champions and such as that. So they made this museum talking about baseball in Avon Park. And a couple of the locals, Hal McRae, went on to, was the first, I think, black manager in Major League Baseball. Thomas Flash Gordon was a great pitcher. His kids also went on to be Major League Baseball stars, and they've gotten some buy-in from some local baseball players to help finance this. But the county voted, and they voted to take the money out of the Tourist Development Commission, because the Tourist Development Commission is supposed to bring in tourist dollars, tourist tax dollars, and spend on tourist attractions. And arguably, museums is one of the attractions listed as a tourist attraction. So when this thing was sold to us, and I think it was sold to us like snake oil, but when it was sold to us, we're going to let the tourists pay for all this. You know, the tourists come in, the tourists are going to finance all of our tourism stuff, and it'll take it off the backs of the taxpayers, and it'll generate more tax money, because when the tourists come, they'll stay in the hotels, and they'll buy gasoline locally, and they'll go to the restaurants, and they'll go to the tourist attractions. Okay? So that's the way it was sold. Okay, but now this new commission, 20 years down the road, says, we didn't promise that. We don't think that should come from the tourist tax money. We think that should come from our local taxpayer money, what they call general fund revenue. And there's going to be a vote on this. And there's at least two county commissioners that are all in for letting us pay for it. And there's at least one, maybe one and a half, that are in for letting the tourists pay for it. And if you don't let your voice be heard, they're going to do what they want. You know?
Well, that's always the case. I mean, if nobody raises an objection to something, then as far as they're concerned, they have a green flag to go ahead. And that's exactly what they do. And again, that was, when you go back, some of our people, Bill Youngman and John Drennan and those were two of the lightning rods when they used to go to the county commission meeting. And
Mr. Wilson.
And Mr. Wilson, they'd bring up something that was, looked shady or questionable, and they would raise their voice, bring their data. Bill was a good one for bringing his data with him and reciting all the numbers and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of it was they would give them like, okay, thank you very much, and have your seat and whatnot. Now, I think Bill was able to, because I think he was more vocal than most, and I think he was able to get a few things done. One of his big things was the illegal immigration. Are they identified when they're going to be hired for the county, that kind of thing, and that and so on. So they were able to do that. But I think since those fellows have passed on, that there's not. I don't see anybody or haven't too many people that have brought up those subjects at the county commission meeting, and so. Again, when nobody raises an issue, then it's just a green light to go ahead.
And sadly, no one has come in to pick up that torch.
No.
You see people when it affects them directly, when it affects people directly, that's when you start to see them come to the podium. If they're at a certain housing development or a certain area of the county, when it affects that, you see them come forward, and sometimes there'll be 10 or 20 people from that area that come by to speak, but you really don't see anybody in the general public who has gone in and taken a deep dive into some of these places that really need to be looked at. I mean, as a conservative, I'm sure that we need to spend money on police, fire, ambulance. In Florida here, the landfill is something we need to look at. But really, having the county involved in housing, I don't think is really a good idea.
No, and I think if I remember in my time here, the item that brought to me the biggest, I'll call it the brouhaha, was when they wanted to build that go-kart track, or, down south and whatnot.
Mhm.
That brought out the people, boy, in droves. And I mean, both sides were very vocal, but again, the inside influenced the outside. And so unfortunately, that thing, after a lot of back and forth and trials and tribulations, they finally said, okay, we're done. We're done. Yeah. And so on. So that's what happens again. If there's not a ruckus raised or questions raised or people being vocal or involved, then it's a green light for them to go ahead with whatever they're doing. Even if the majority of the people don't like it because they didn't raise enough opposition, the county commission or whoever's in charge of that particular thing says, okay, yeah, we're just going to go ahead because nobody's really that concerned.
And this is a good year, whether you want to raise something on the state, the local level, the state level, the federal level. It's a good year because this is an election year. And when it's an election year, you would be surprised at how malleable and friendly some of these elected officials become. They're like, you have a concern. Well, your concern is my concern, and please vote for me. But you have in the county here in Highlands County, you have 2 county commissioners that are up for election. You have 3 school board members that are up for election. You have a state rep who's up for election, and you have congressional representatives who's up for election. So they are a little bit more interested, I think, in your opinion. They want to make sure that you vote for them, and you also tell your friends what a great person they are, what a great representative they are. They help me out,
Yeah, well, that's the way it is with all politicians. It's like we have some politicians here that they have not seen the light of Highlands County very often. Let's put it that way. Okay, they just do not want to be involved, do not want to answer questions, do not want to make themselves available to answer questions. And I mean, that's the sad part of it. And then when it comes the day of voting, you're between the devil and a deep blue sea. Now, you can either do a couple things. You can not vote, okay, for that particular person or that particular office. That's one way, okay, it cancels out that vote. Or you can hold your nose and vote for the person, even though in your heart of hearts you do not want to vote for that person because they really haven't delivered the mail to you in any reasonable fashion. And so I think that's the dilemma, especially, and I'm going to say this, but especially when it comes to Republican candidates. They don't do the things that you expect a Republican conservative person to do, and consequently you just lose faith. Mm-hmm. You just lose. I mean, I'm sorry. How many times have we tried to contact Mr. Franklin to at least come, do a Zoom presentation, do a phone call, anything in the way of communicating? Zero. That's what's very, very frustrating.
Well, John, I think that there are some candidates who believe that they are bulletproof, that they have support of the party, that they can get what they want. And I will tell you that this is why it's time to begin looking at recruiting candidates. And there's a lot of reasons people run for office. Sometimes they don't like the person that's in there. Sometimes they have an issue that they want to get before the public, and they want to bring that stuff forward. Sometimes it's to make that elected official come in line at least for the pre-election time. But one thing, it's expensive to run for office. It's very, very, very expensive to run for office. So I think it's up to, if there are people who don't like the individual that's in office and they want to recruit somebody, you better have, there are people who've asked me, Barry, why don't you ever run for office? And I said, because they haven't had the draft Barry Foster for insert your office here with saying, oh, don't worry, Barry, we already have collected $20,000 in campaign money for you to put out signs and buy advertisements and have public rallies and things like that, because it takes quite a bit of money to run for office. And if somebody was to come to me with a draft Barry Foster to run for office, and look, we've got $20,000 in the bank ready to go when you open up your campaign, well, let's talk about that. But most of the time, people who want to recruit candidates say, you know what you ought to do? You ought to run for office. Oh, I should I? Mm-hmm. You want to be my campaign manager? Oh, well, no, I can't do that. And so, it takes a bit to get people to run for office, or even to mount ballot issues. It takes quite a bit of effort, and that's why we see many of the things that are very liberally oriented. They are well funded. They have all the money they need to do what they want to do. Yeah,
it's it's amazing. Just a side note, but something that speaks to that. The person that ran as a Democratic candidate for president in the last election blew through $1 billion in about 100 days. Blew through $1 billion.
$1,000 million.
Right, but it turns out that her and her husband just bought like a $1.5 million oceanfront.
I thought it was
house.
$8. I thought it was $8 million.
I don't. Whatever.
I mean, it's an oceanfront lot.
Yeah, and so on, a house. So finances couldn't have been too bad. Money had to come from somewhere.
Well, that's not her. That's not her debt. That's the campaign debt.
Yeah,
that's different.
Maybe that was part of the billion. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Well, it's like the congresswoman from Minnesota, who all of a sudden is now worth $30 million, and came here and said to the camera just the other day when she was questioned, where did all this money? Oh, I only make $174,000 a year. You know that. That's all I have. I don't have any money.
Well, apparently,
turns out she's got $30 million.
Apparently, there's an investigation mounted into where that $30 million came from.
I hope so.
And where it's going to.
Because of all the stuff that's going on, the money out there had to be flowing like water. I mean, literally, just through multiple hands, it just passed around like it was candy. And here's the American taxpayer, struggling to make ends meet, and then all of a sudden you have this going on.
Well, John, I have made this comparison before, but in doing the news, you would find people who were accused of embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars, large amounts of money, and the embezzlement goes back like 4 or 5 years, and why didn't they find it before? And the modus operandi continues to be the same. When somebody first starts doing it, they are very careful. Mm-hmm. They just take a little bit here, a little bit there. They make sure that their tracks are covered, and they get away with it. And nobody notices. Nobody says anything. So then they start taking more. And they start taking more. And as they start taking more, they get less careful about it because, heck, nobody's looking. Nobody saw anything. So why don't we just go ahead? And by the time they look at the ledgers and go, we're missing a lot of money here. Where's this leak coming from? And there was a story about a guy who was trying to rectify a $1.75 discrepancy in the ledgers, and came back to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars that had been taken by going back after that. And it's the same way here. For years and years and years, and we talked about Nick Shirley earlier, but these daycare centers, and now he's gone to what they call NUT, which is non-emergency medical transport companies, which apparently also are owned by Somalian businesses and have been paid for trips which were never made. They go to these places and there's no buses there. There's no footprints in front of the door. The one thing about Minnesota is when it snows, you can tell if people have been going in and going out.
Yep.
Now here in Florida, not so much, but they went and looked in there, and they're finding another whole rabbit trail and No one has ever looked into it. And in fact, I saw a new guy, and I don't have his name, but he was a black guy. He was in New York City, and he was standing in front of this 2-story, kind of an older house. The paint was peeling, and he says, "Well, this is so and so rocketry, and they just got they've been getting $4 million a year from the federal government for their rocketry research." And he said, "This doesn't look really like a rocketry place, or a place that's been getting $4 million a year. You would think for $4 million a year you could paint the house."
Yep.
Just thinking out loud. And so no one has been checking. And so now that they're beginning to check, I think that there's a lot of wide-eyed scrambling going on.
And I think Elon Musk, was the beginning of all of this.
Yes.
Let's face it, because until he came along and got really immersed in trying to uncover fraud, waste, and abuse, it was talked about. Several congressmen over the years have had their list. Oh, I produce this list every year. Here's all the money being stolen. But that was the end of it. Nobody really did anything after that. So nobody was punished. It just kept going on. But I think once this came to light and Elon Musk brought it to light with what he did and what he unearthed, that then created all kinds of people that are questioning, oh my God, what else is being stolen? And people started looking, and people like Dave, and then like when he hooked up with Nick and so on, and others now across the country. I saw a story the other day that this fellow I want to say it was in one of the bigger cities of California, and he's taken on the corruption in that particular city. And what he's finding initially, is like unbelievable the amount of waste and fraud. But you're right. People start by taking, we'll siphon a little off over here, a little off over there. Nobody really notices. So, let's double our amount next month.
Well, this has been kind of common knowledge for at least 50 years.
Oh yeah.
Because there was this senator. You remember this guy? I remember this guy by the name of William Proxmire. And he had this thing called the Golden Fleece Award, which he would periodically give to some business, government agency, elected official for fleecing the government for money, that they were spending wild-eyed amounts of money on things that didn't seem to matter. And I remember the one thing that always sticks in my mind was the sex life of the tsetse fly, that they had spent at this time tens of thousands of dollars, which back then was a lot of money, on this. And I didn't realize at the time that this was a money laundering thing, that when they gave that money to the college for this supposed investigation, this research that they were doing, that money would flow through the college and back into government funds in terms of campaign donations and things like that, that was taxpayers paying for the lavish lifestyle of elected officials and elected and appointed officials.
Well, I'll tell you what I think made the Minnesota thing so bad. It was done by people that were not born here.
Yes.
That makes it a double, as far as I'm concerned, it makes it a double penalty, because not only are you taking from the people that are working to pay that tax money, but now you're from foreign country, came here maybe under unscrupulous conditions, and now you're stealing from the country in the realm of $9 billion? That really frustrates people.
Well, we have to really understand that there is a religious belief in the world that if you are not born into that religion, you are to be working for those people. You are second or third class, fourth class citizens. And the people who are now at the point of this investigation, many of them belong to that religion. And in fact, Nicholas Shirley has been accused of being anti-Muslim. He says, we're not anti-Muslim. He says, we're just trying to find out some of this stuff that's been receiving money and find out if they're legitimate. Has nothing to do with race, creed, color, national origin. Has nothing to do with that. This only has to do with the money. But I think that they are so convicted by what's going on, and they know that if you are, well, let's say it, if you're a Muslim and the people who are not Muslim should be working for you. There was a program where new arrivals who were Muslim were the Christians. Church was helping them out, carrying them, placing them in the grocery store, trying to help them out. And not only were they not thankful, they felt, well, this is what you should be doing for us, because, of course, we're the chosen religion and you should be working for us. Mm-hmm. And so when these people come into the United States and begin to use our system against us, I mean, it's nothing personal. It's just the way they believe.
Well, and I think of it is, they're also, especially if you take a look at the representative from Minnesota, she is also arrogant about it. Arrogant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
All right. And it's like, you're right. It's like, you owe me. Okay. I'm here. You owe me. And so on. So, and this is but again, the more of that personality, if you will, comes out from a person who's essentially part of the problem, that really makes people even matter still. Because you're working your butt off 40 hours a week trying to earn a living. You don't have anywhere near $9 billion. You might have $9. And so when you see somebody riding off into the sunset with buckets of cash, the hair stands up in the back of your neck.
And it's something, again, that's been going on for many years.
Yes.
I know a gentleman who has done this on many occasions, and he is big enough and strong enough that nobody really has given him any guff to this point. But he was, the last story that I heard, he was in a local discount grocery mart, and he had gotten some big bottles of bleach. He had like 2 in each hand, these big bottles of bleach. And someone up the line from him was paying with the food stamp, with the EBT. And from the back of the line, he said, "You're welcome. You're welcome." In other words, you're using my money to buy your stuff, mm-hmm. and I'm using my money to buy stuff. And I think that one of the things that has encouraged Americans to begin to look more closely at these kinds of programs and the USAID program is the fact that people now feel entitled to that money. When they took the SNAP program and said, you're not going to be buying any more junk food with this and no more sodas, there are people really mad. They said, well, how am I supposed to, have money to do my eyebrows now if I can't buy my chips and snacks and sodas with this money?
I think a story that fits right in with this, I believe, I watched it yesterday. It was an announcement that Coca-Cola is closing like 4 bottling plants in California.
Oh, really?
And they're consolidating into one plant with more automation, doing away with, unfortunately, a number of jobs. But I think part of what's happening with companies like Coca-Cola is that that's one of the things that you can't buy any longer, soda, because of the sugar content, the fact that kids were getting hooked on it and then developing juvenile diabetes, and then here comes the medical profession to say, oh, good, we've got all kinds of medicine for you. So it's a vicious cycle, and I think RFK Jr. brought this to light, where you now have these kids and older adults too, but primarily kids. Unfortunately, a lot of them are pretty well raised on sugary drinks and sugary cereals and so on. And he's saying, wait a minute, this is what is causing that young child, 2, 3, 4 years old, to develop juvenile diabetes. Mm-hmm. And now they become hooked on medication because of the diabetes and so on. So taking away that, yes, it's a little bit tough in the beginning, but I think what he's looking at and what the administration looking at long term, as years go by and you get them weaned off of that kind of stuff, their health is going to get better. And we see this when they show pictures of people, young people in that from back in the 70s, mm-hmm. who were a waistline of like 28. Now their waistline is 38, and and they're still a teenager. Something is dramatically wrong, and you have to trace it back to what they were putting in their body.
Well, Americans throughout the world are lampooned as being huge and fat.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And there's a reason for that. I remember back in the 70s when I was in college, they were talking about how they had what they call food in the American style. And they were the Doritos and the chips and the Cheetos and all the snack foods that were proliferating the world. And now a lot of that stuff and a lot of the way it's made is not allowed in other countries because there's so much in there that's really not good for you.
Right. And I think he's brought that to light now. I mean, people used to talk about it in the so-called dark quarters, but now it's become, because of his voice and because he's raised the issues, and Trump is behind him with, trying to make America healthy again. All right. That stuff is beginning to come to light. And yes, there are a lot of people that are upset about it. What do you mean I can't buy soda with my food stamps? What do you mean I can't buy a bag of chips or a candy bar? No, I'm sorry. That's off of that list. So it's not going to be easy, and there's going to be people that are going to fight it tooth and nail. You can count on it. But unfortunately, if you don't do that, then that vicious cycle of you contract a disease, medication comes along, then if medication doesn't do it, then you go to the hospital. So that escalation of costs going forward for that child, because of the way they were eating and drinking in their early life, this is the end result.
But the thing, John, is that a lot of these companies have pledged to do away with these things in 2027 or 2028. And why? Because they figure when this administration goes away, those rules and regulations will go away. We saw after the first Trump administration how quickly things turned around, how fast it turned around. And so, excuse me, I think they're hedging their bets. Is that J.D. Vance will not get in, RFK Jr. will not be in charge of things, and things will be going the other way. Like I've heard all kinds of things about how Dr. Fauci is going to be held to account, how some of these other people are going to be held to account, and so far we haven't seen anybody held to account for all the things that went in during the pandemic.
Well, I'll tell you, the pressure on Trump right now to let Pam Bondi go it is getting louder and louder and louder by the day.
Yes.
Because you're right. People, it's been a year now. Trump has been in office for exactly a year yesterday.
Yes.
All right. And people are saying, wait a minute, we've given you a year to bring some of these bad guys to justice, and it hasn't happened. And people are really, really getting upset. I mean, I gave her a long leash when she got elected and voices started talking about this 6 months ago or whatever. I said, give her some time. She's got to develop evidence. Mm-hmm. Well, after a year with everything that we've seen and heard so far of the bad guys, you have to have some time where you can start saying, okay, Mr. Smith, I'm going to file charges against you. You're going to have a trial date next week, next month, whatever. But they've got to start putting some bad guys away, because otherwise the American people are going to totally lose faith. Totally lose faith.
And unfortunately, there's a very black background or a very white background to paint her accomplishments against, because we have Marco Rubio, who since the first time I saw him, was never a fan, okay? Never been a fan of Marco Rubio. He has never done very much that I approved of, especially as a senator, was not the kind of guy as an elected official that I thought was very effective. But as a Secretary of State, when he knows that the president has his back and the president said, you do this, that, and the other thing, he's doing this, that, and the other thing. Mm-hmm. He's talking tough. You look at what happened in Venezuela, what is apparently, and I'm going to be talking with Juan Vega again about South America, but apparently Cuba's on life support right now. And so what happened in Iran with Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, one would expect that Pam Bondi would be moving in that direction with that amount of vigor to make sure that some of these high-ranking people at least have charges filed against them. You know, I mean,
no, it has really gotten to a boiling point, because I'll tell you, some of the people that I think were diehard Pam Bondi fans when she got elected or put in that position are now lost faith in her, and they're becoming very vocal. So I don't think Trump is going to be able to ignore it much longer, because let's face it, he's her boss. And so people look at him. Donald, You're in charge of her. She is not doing the job that we expected her to do. You can't hang on to her any longer. You've got to get somebody in there that is going to say, okay, I've got enough evidence. I'm going to start filing charges. And if I have to file 6 charges a day, good, because there's thousands and thousands of bad people out there that have been ripping off the American people. Why aren't they paying a penalty for it? That's the question.
Well, I mean, I heard a sound bite from President Trump the other day, which I am going to take as being true, although it gets increasingly more difficult with AI to understand what's real and what's not real. But I did look it up. I did do some research, and apparently Donald Trump in one of his press conferences says people will be prosecuted for rigging the election. It's coming. It's coming. And now, I look back at Pam Bondi and the whole, and I'll use the word fiasco, the whole fiasco with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, and that became very public, which never ever should have been made public. No. That they should have handled that. Although both Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino might have a bit of a short fuse, and their fuse might burn a little quickly. And they are somewhat given to outbursts. Let's use that word, outbursts. And so for that to come and for the media to capitalize on anything that goes wrong on the Trump administration, it came to the forefront, and they fanned the flames, and I think it made it more than what it was. But she didn't have a handle on that, no. And she has not been moving forward with the same kind of vigor. Even people who are middlemen, the mid-range, they're getting some of the small fish on this. Some of the little people are going to jail,
yep.
And they apparently are not giving up the bigger people, but they know who they are. Kash Patel has a well-oiled machine in the FBI, and so why she's not moving forward, and she may. It's amazing how they move forward when their job's at stake.
Well, it was, I don't know if you watched President Trump in Davos this morning.
I did not.
Well, he spoke for an hour in Davos this morning. I watched a good portion of it. But one of the things he mentioned, and he didn't go into detail, but he said that some in my administration are not very good at speaking out and talking in the ways that they should. In other words, they're saying things that, they shouldn't say, or they're saying too much, or they're not saying enough. But he's saying, sometimes some of our people have a messaging problem. So he must be aware of it. And I think some of these people that are listening are probably saying, I wonder if that's me. Okay. I gotta tone it down or tone it up or do something. But obviously the boss isn't happy with some of the things that are being said by people that work for him.
Well, his people are constantly on news stations and news talk going on. And, you wonder sometimes how they have time to do their job. But and in fact, I was talking about somebody the other day who had gone and surrounded himself with good people. Mm-hmm. In fact, I went the other day to Frostproof, to the Chamber of Commerce breakfast there, or lunch, I should say. And they had Neil Cumby, longtime county commissioner, who I believe was term limited out and ran for property appraiser. And so he gave a little speech and said he'd been wanting to get into property appraisal for a while to see what was going on and how they could improve that program. And the opportunity came, and he got elected there. But he began surrounding himself with people who knew exactly what they were doing. The former property appraiser in Lake, we'll say it was Lake County, was voted out of office, and he called him to come down and work for him. And this guy is sharp. I mean, this guy is really sharp. And so if you're going to get elected to an office, the first thing you need to do is surround yourself with good people. So let's say Pam Bondi has the best of the best working for her. She has time to go on the news programs, but the messaging she's giving is either not saying the right things or saying too much, apparently.
Well, I haven't seen her much on TV the last few weeks. I mean, she's not been very visible. Okay, so I think that whether that's a telling tale or whether it's something that's going to be coming out, I don't know. But I do know that the voices outside of her are speaking loudly at this point and saying, time for her to go.
Mm.
She's not bringing anybody in. She's not charging people. She's not going after the big fish. Or if she is, we're hearing nothing about it, and nothing physical or visible is being done. So there's got to be a change. There has to be something done.
How much of this do you think is political? I mean, we have the midterms coming up, and I was just reading how there is a push in the Democrat Party to begin to try to impeach Donald Trump again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
they don't have the votes, but they want to. They want to get there are elements of that party who want to get what they think is information out there that will try to sway the electorate. Although there is the thought that that could easily backfire and cause people to rally around the president for the things that he's doing. So how much do you think that Pam Bondi's not making these arrests might be political because they're afraid there'll be a backlash if let's go to Minnesota and all the things surrounding this, because apparently much of it has to do with one community, which is the Somalian community. How much of this are they going to be able to paint as racist and paint Trump as a racist?
Well, they're going to say that no matter what you do. I mean, you could go over there and congratulate them all day and they would still call you a racist or, Islamophobia or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter because that's all. When you listen to, and really, I saw somebody the other day that made this speech and I agree with it. And they were saying that the Democratic Party has become the party of everything dark. In other words, they're for the bad guys. They're for the illegals, not for the American citizens, but for the illegals, much more than they are for the American citizens.
Mm-hmm.
They want to throw money at them. They want to give them programs. They want to do this. They want to do that. When did you hear a Democratic senator or representative of renown ever say anything much about this is what we're going to do for the American people?
A positive approach.
President, never. Practically never. No, it's like Trump's bad. This is bad. That's bad. This is no good. Everything they say is negative, and especially towards the American people and their own people in their own party. And that's why you see some of these people that have been lifelong Democrats have come out and said, I'm done. I'm done with them. I mean, they do nothing for me. All they do is promote the illegals. They promote the criminals. They promote the bad guys, but not for me, the American citizen who's a law-abiding person. So you're going to become very frustrated. And at the end, you're just going to say, I'm done. I'm done with you. And a lot of them have.
Well, yeah, you're seeing, and again, we've talked about this, I think, as recently as last week. I think there is a civil war in both parties. I think there's a civil. You have really I call them commucrats, the communists. They call them socialists, whether they're Democratic socialists,
Yeah.
They're communists.
Right.
Okay, those people pulling their party so far to the left, they are unrecognizable to the people of our Father's Day. The Democrats believe government could do a lot for the people by using government programs, and the Republicans thought we'll let the free market decide. And it has gotten so divided now that the Democrats, like Mandami and people like that, want basically a communist government in New York City. And the people who are Democrats go, well, I believe in democratic principle. I don't believe in communism. On the other side, you have the rhinos, the Republicans in name only, who are really big government people who have an R after their name, as opposed to, they call them Trumpsters. Now they call them America Firsters, that believe that the free market should decide, that things should be done more in the way the founders are. And there's an argument, there's a civil war going on there where Republicans are, the Republican establishment is really reacting badly against the Trump supporters who are actually American First supporters. So since the 1990s, I have been predicting that there would be a realignment of the parties. It didn't come nearly as quickly as I thought it would, but it looks like it's coming now.
Well, the other part to it is that there's so much going on and so much bad news. I mean, yes, Trump has done some really unbelievable things. I mean, I listen to people like Glenn Beck and others, and they're saying, and Glenn Beck, if you remember when Trump ran the first time, he was anti-Trump all the way.
Yes.
All the way. And that's what really cost him a lot of what he had built up over the years when he took that stance against Trump, because the American people were ready for someone like Trump to come along. And Glenn Beck said, oh, him and his guys, they were all over Trump. He's a bad guy. He's not this, he's not that, and so on. But I think Glenn Beck has seen the light of day because he has seen what Trump actually gets done.
Mhm.
And this is something that's very unique in a politician. They come out and they'll give you a list. Oh, here's the 10 things I'm going to accomplish when I'm in office. And they do none of it. Trump comes in, here's my list of 10. Oh, by the way, I did 20. Okay, this is the way Trump he's been working at warp speed for a year now. At warp speed.
Glenn Beck, and I really used to like him a lot, and there are friends of mine that still do like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when Trump began to run for office, he was pegged as a populist, okay, and that he was and they were comparing him to the guy in 1939 Germany, okay, and were warning that was what was going to happen, and back, two things began to happen. Number one, he and his buddies would sit around and have all these inside jokes, and they would call people and try to make them look like morons.
Yep.
And they would laugh about it, and it's the kind of thing you expected out of a rock and roll station with a bunch of kids doing that kind of stuff. And the second thing was he was ABT, anybody but Trump, and he would bring all these tertiary candidates on to talk about their campaigns, to try to split the vote, to try to bring Trump down.
Right.
And when we first started, I was a Ted Cruz kind of guy. Okay.
Right.
I thought Cruz would do a good job.
Yep.
And I was out campaigning for him. And so many people came by and were yelling Donald Trump. I realized that what was going to happen. You could, you could see, as they would say, the handwriting on the wall.
Right.
And so when Trump got in, at first I thought he might be a shill because he was friends with a lot of these Democrats. Okay,
he voted Democrat for many years.
Yes,
and backed many Democrats in New York City.
Absolutely. But but after he got in, he started. It didn't take long for him to make a believer out of me. Okay, I thought, well, if this is what he's going to do, then we're all for this. And as we know, his first administration was plagued by moles that were in there, and people were undercutting him, and he had 4 years after the election went to Joe Biden to plan. And so when he came in this time, he came in ready to go.
Yep.
He came in with his people and started plugging them in right away. And you're right, his second term has been extraordinary.
Oh yes, it has. I mean, there's nobody in my memory, and I have voted in every election that I can remember since I was old enough to vote. I have never seen a president come into office and do so much stuff in 1 year like he has in his administration. I know, but it's a large part of it is his administration. People he's surrounded himself with, like Benson and the rest of them, they really are top-notch people. They know what they're doing. They know what to do. They know how to get it done, and so on. And I think with his support, you're right, they feel emboldened to even go harder, and get on these cases like Benson, talking about how he's going to take, and all of the departments that report to him are going to be involved in unearthing this corruption and fraud and waste that's taking place.
And just to come in, we're going to wind up today's program, get ready for tomorrow, but really what's going to be the proof of the pudding is going to be the midterms. Because the far left portion of the Democrat Party is going to be trying to recruit as many far left people as they can to pull things as far left as they can. Although, like Tim Walz, are going to try to appear a middle of the road. In fact, they tried to make Biden look like a middle of the road candidate, but there's a lot of discussion about who actually was running that administration. And, on the other side, you're going to see the American Firsters trying to put in candidates that really are more populist candidates, people who are more what you call true Republicans. And so I'm hoping that people have done will do what we've done at the Tea Party. We've imported somebody who knows about elections, knows about how things work, and our Tea Party meets Tuesday nights at the Vietnam Veterans Hall here in Sebring, and there's an hour of social time right before the Tea Party meeting, and they're there with a table getting ready to show you how to call your candidates, how to call your elected officials, how to push for the conservative issues, and I'm hoping that we can get more people to do that kind of thing to get the voters informed.
Well, speaking of voting, something that I ran across yesterday, which really, on top of everything else, when it comes to fraud, Scott Pressler, who you know is the fella that really went out and campaigned and got voters signed up to vote for Trump and whatnot. In Minnesota, he did the research. In Minnesota, the law allows one registered voter to vouch for up to 8 people their residency on election day. So if you're a registered voter in Minnesota and you've got 8 people that you want to get to vote on election day, you can come in and say, I know Mr., and Mrs. I know them. I can vouch for them. Okay, they can vote. That's it. You want to talk about something that's ripe for corruption?
Oh, yes.
That's it, brother. That's it right there.
And that's a state issue that the state's going to have to deal with. And I think as they begin to clean out the corruption, it will allow, how do I put this, real Minnesotans, the Minnesota, the electorate.
The Danes and the Swedes and all the people that came over, right, that used to be in control.
Yeah, and maybe they can make some changes there. But
I mean, you want to talk about something that is off the chart, corruptible, that's it, brother.
And the vote harvesting.
Yeah, that's it.
The vote harvesting. And what it may take is some people going in there and making some real changes. And my heart goes out to those folks. And we're here in Florida, and I want to remind the folks who are listening here in the Sunshine State that Mr. DeSantis is going to be leaving, and you better be careful who you put in there.
Yep.
You need to really vet these candidates, and there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah, there is going to be a bunch.
There's a bunch of them out there, and it's going to be up to us to vet to make sure that the people who get elected will continue what Ron DeSantis had started.
Well, a lot of them that are going to be running are coming from the DeSantis administration.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's at least 3 that I have seen and heard that are running, and they're all in his current administration now. So
now, and we know we have people outside of Florida who listen to us. I mean, this is an internet-based. I mean, if you're on the space station and you have an internet connection, you can hear our program. So I would, if you are in another state, we sure like to hear from you and what's going on with your areas. I mean, weigh in with us. It's easy to do. You can drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com or put it in the comments below, because we'd really like to hear from you. And if you would like, subscribe, and share, help us to bump our subscriptions up here. It would really help a lot.
Amen.
So, I'll tell you what, we're out of time for today, but there's always tomorrow. And
Good Lord willing.
You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded here at the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. As always, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Our YouTube page is The Barry Foster Show on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, and share. We're always open for your ideas. And don't forget to subscribe to our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram as well. And again, we'd like to really thank our friends at Ridge Florist who make all of this possible. And Valentine's Day is coming up. Remember, Ridge Florist is the quintessential place to go for your flowers. Get them delivered early, guys. You'll thank me for it, okay? It's a great return on investment. Ridge Florist. That's ridgefloristinc.com. Give them a call, 863-382-4477, or stop on by and see them. 111 Memorial Drive, just north of the intersection of Memorial and the Sebring Parkway, and tell them Barry sent you by. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, Barry Foster and John Larsen, and we'll see you next time.